Welcome to the Pharma Voice Editor's Take video series, filmed live at the 2012 DIA Annual Meeting in Philadelphia. Hosted by Taryn Grome, editor of Pharma Voice. In this session, Taryn meets with Kristofer Spahr, Director of Regulatory Services, Take Solutions.
Chris, welcome to the 2012 DIA Editor's Take video program.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
The outsourcing of regulatory affairs, processes, and work is becoming the new norm within the industry. What are some of the important best practices that a sponsor organization should be aware of when considering this type of operational strategy?
Well, you know, economic and competitive pressures are motivating regulatory affairs organizations to consider outsourcing as a part of their business model. But the good news is there are some best practices that can be employed to make these relationships more successful. It's interesting because even with the high science and medicine that comprise the industry, still very much word of mouth in terms of identifying potential vendors for outsourcing strategies. It's not unusual for companies to reach out to their industry colleagues or other companies that have done outsourcing, and also to attend events like DIA, where they may have heard someone speak, or they may stop by a booth at the exhibit hall and talk to some of the people in the company as well. But once companies come up with a list of potential outsourcing vendors, they then tend to follow the normal request for information, request for proposal process, where there's a lot of detailed questions that are asked, site visits, discussions with some of the leads from the company. But one of the more interesting things that I think has become popular and very effective is that they'll take their short list of potential vendors and they'll put them in a pilot project. Now the interesting part about that is it's not just a question of can the vendor do the work, but how do they handle the whole project experience? So did they communicate well? Did they ask the right questions? Did they use a single point of contact as a part of the process? And if something changed in the project, how did they handle that change? Now once you've made a selection for a vendor, the attention kind of shifts to how can we ramp them up as quickly as possible. And there's really two things that I think are best practices that are effective there. One is you've got to make sure that your own processes are well documented. I know one company that literally took their internal staff and solely based on the documentation that they had, made sure that they could perform the tasks and actually role-played as though they were the vendor. The other thing that's very important is to actually have a trainer on site with the vendor staff, not just training them in the weeks leading up to the actual engagement, but also in the first couple of weeks when those bumps and bruises tend to happen and issues that can be mitigated. So those are among the things that they will kind of get you past the startup curve. Now once you get to the point where your vendor is performing, then the attention is going to turn to those things which really can enhance and grow the relationship. So things like governance becomes very important, both internal and external governance, engaging management at all levels so that everybody's aware of the performance, the issues, how they're being addressed, moving forward. It's also very important for the vendor to provide a single point of contact who remains consistent. That's very important to the sponsor to have that consistent person handling their problems. And then communication, which is always a big part of these engagements, is very important but can kind of be eased back a bit. The other thing that takes over at this point in the game is service level agreements and key performance indicators. So things that focus on the quality of the deliverable and also on the timeliness of the deliverable. Everybody wants a quality deliverable, but if it's not delivered on time, then it really greatly diminishes the value. So things that companies tend to look at this point in time is first-time quality, the amount of rework that's involved, and also the actual versus when things were received.
So, and related to the first question, what are some of the key areas in an outsourcing relationship that could lead to dissatisfaction with an outsourcing partner?
Some other things can also scuttle the relationship that companies need to really look out for, and that is my vendor going to be scalable? If I want them to take over more and more work, can they handle that? Is the company financially stable, or is that now in question? Does the company become part of a takeover strategy for another company, and now their business mission shifts a bit? And then always kind of a factor in these engagements is technology. Do they know our technology? Can they learn our technology? Do they have their own technology they can utilize? So I think there are some best practices that are very important. And even with the large farmers who are now trying to focus their limited budgets and limited staff on the higher quality work, and down to the smaller pharmaceuticals who now, when that new product comes through the pipeline, needs to stretch their staff a bit. Outsourcing has really become the new norm. And again, I think there are some business practices that can be followed to really greatly enhance the success of the relationship.
Fantastic.
Additional Editors Take videos, as well as podcasts, white papers, webinars, and more, are available in the resources area at www.pharmavoice.com.